Hajime! Welcome back to Comic-Jutsu. JT McRoberts here, the original comic book Ronin with you once again, and today we're going to do something extra special for our comic book collectors out there. That's right, we're going to talk about the top 5 most valuable books about comics in my collection. So, let's get to it. Number 5. Jack Kirby's Heroes and Villains, the Black Magic Edition. You can find this book at reasonable prices, probably around $50 to $75. Sometimes maybe a little bit more if you have the hardcover. It's much harder to find. You can see that mine is the soft cover. I think I got this for a really good price actually at Heroes Con many moons ago. But what makes my particular copy valuable is that when I go to conventions, rather than have people sign photos or comic books, although I do that sometimes, the first thing that I did was I would ask them to sign their favorite Jack Kirby characters in this book. So I have some really nifty signatures in this book. It makes it very valuable to me and perhaps to another collector out there. This was based on a sketchbook by Jack Kirby, featuring originally 129 characters. This version has 134 characters, but he gave the sketchbook to his wife Roz in the 70s. It was first collected and printed in the mid-80s, and then it was re-released in this version you see now, the Black Magic Edition, with the changes being that there are more characters and the sketches are actually inked by a variety of top comic book professionals. I don't know why I have that stuck in there, but look at that. The King and I, introduction by Jim Steranko. Here you see a list of the characters from Captain America and Darkseid, all the way down to Superman, Silver Surfer, and the Challengers. First Captain America, you see I've got this signed by Smart Mark Wade. Darkseid of the New Gods. See there, you can see the ink signing through. It's a real signature. There's Orion. I'm not going to flip through absolutely every one of these, but there are a few that I wanted to feature, such as this one. The Thing from the Fantastic Four. You recognize that signature? Signed by the one and only George Perez. That's right, when I asked him to do it, he said, you know what? I'll sign The Thing. And we know that Perez had an absolute classic run on Fantastic Four. There's his Thor, inked by Paul Smith. The Hulk, inked by Mike Thibodeau. Doctor Doom by Mike Manley. So on and so forth. One of the others I wanted to show you. There is Odin, inked by Walt Simonson. Here we have the Newsboy Legion, inked and signed by Carl Kessel. He's a really cool dude when I met him too in person. Very fun stuff. Now what's interesting is I had most of these signed only a few years after this book was actually released, so it's always interesting to watch the pros flip through this and decide which one that they're going to sign. If they actually inked a piece, they usually go straight to that and want to sign that. But it's always fun to get them talking about Jack Kirby and his work and his influence on them. There's the Guardian, inked by Gil Kane. Anyway, so there you go. Lots of good stuff. Number 4, The Masters of Comic Book Art. This is a late 70s collection, I believe 1979. To be honest with you, I have no idea how I discovered this book. I just came across it and I thought, you know what, this looks like a great collection of art. Nowadays, the soft cover goes for anywhere from $75 to maybe $150. collection of artists such as Will Eisner, Richard Corbin, Moebius. Here you see the list there. You see it starts out with Will Eisner. I could easily flip through every single page of this. Like, just love the way that Eisner adds that graphic sensibility to his splash pages, the combination of words and pictures with the words becoming part of the picture. So many innovative ideas in his work. This book is an absolute treasure trove of work. Here's Kurtzman. Now, this isn't going to be a page-by-page flip through, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of some of the things that you can see in here. Barry Windsor Smith. There's Richard Corbin. This actually reprints Richard Corbin's Midnight Battle, which is not often reprinted. At least at the time it wasn't. Love seeing the lush colors in his prints there. And I've got another one marked here for Moebius. Fantastic spread from Arzak of heavy metal fame. Chihuahua Pearl from Lieutenant Blueberry. There's more Barry Windsor Smith. There's some R. Crumb. Boobity, boobity, boobity. Meatball. Great stuff. Trucking on down the line. There's only one country in the world where a person could get away with expressing themselves as freely as I do. Is he talking about America? He might not be anymore, because, you know, he doesn't even live in the States. Zap covers. There you go. Should realize that, but I don't have a collection of Zap. There you go. Wacky Comics. C-O-M-I-X. Bibliography there. Good stuff. Got the classic Moebius image there on the back cover. Number 3, Bernie Wrightson, A Look Back, edited by Christopher Zavisa. And I believe this one has an introduction by Harlan Ellison, which is what I was thinking about earlier. Yeah, introduction by Harlan Ellison. Just look at this. Mind you, all of these books, I can sit here and go through them page by page by page. So you're going to have to tell me in the comments, like, hey, let's get a closer look at Masters of Comic Book Art. Hey, let's get a more thorough flip through of that Wrightson book. This is a really good biography that covers his career from the 1970s through the early 80s. His work with the studio and whatnot. I was fortunate enough to meet Wrightson. He actually agreed to let me interview him, but he wouldn't let me interview him on video. He wanted to do a podcast. And at the time that I talked to him, I wasn't set up to record an audio interview. I just didn't have the capability, like calling somebody on the phone and whatnot. It was just too early in the technology. And nowadays, that's super easy. It's rote. You can, everybody can do it. But at the time that I talked to him and that he agreed to do the interview, I just didn't have that podcast capability at the time, which saddens me. I wish I would have figured it out, so I could have archived our conversation and picked up some brilliant pieces of artistic wisdom from him. As it was, I got to speak to the man. I attended the panels that he hosted and the ones that he spoke at, and I remember vivid pieces of what he talked about. Again, this is a great, fantastic book. I'd love to tell you I bought all of these like right off the shelf, but this was a lucky discovery at a used bookstore downtown Charlotte. I was on my way to Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, sorry. And I always stopped at the used bookstores on the way see whatever I could find. Saw this on the shelf. I believe at the time it was $25 at the bookstore, and Leatherface. I was absolutely blown away. I knew immediately, like, this book is worth a lot more than what they're asking for it. I absolutely have to buy it. And I did. Nowadays, you can find this going anywhere from $1 to $2 to $300 easily. Nice color piece there. A lot of great line work in this, in addition to the paintings, various designs. There's a Frankenstein. Just fantastic stuff. That's interesting. That looks very Swamp Thing. 1974. So is that a proto Swamp Thing design? Is that what that is? Cool stuff. Chapter 7, his work at Warren. So anyway, like I said, we could easily do a page by page flip through of each one of these books, but I'm not going to be able to do that for this particular video. This is cool because the fans of artist editions, here you go. Here's the original sketch from Murders in the Rue Morgue. A little bit more finished pencil detail, and then the finished work itself. You can see how tight his pencils are there in that little inset. There you see he's got the photograph of his buddy Jeff Jones, also of the studio fame, that he used as the model for the finished piece. Brilliant pen and ink work there. So yeah, you know, we could go through this thing page by page by page by page. It is an absolute treasure trove. One of my personal absolute favorite books and collections. And if you're a Bernie Wrightson fan, you owe it to yourself to get a copy of this someday. Maybe it will see reprinting. Who knows? We'll see. We have what is possibly the most evil book about superhero comics ever made. The Comic Book Heroes. The first history of modern comic books from the Silver Age to the present, by Gerard Jones and Will Jacobs. Now, if you don't understand why this is evil, it's because of this dude right here, Gerard Jones. You'll just have to go Google what happened to him and all the atrocious things that they discovered about him. Nice little Travis Charest cover there. But to me, this is the seminal history, the seminal work on the history of modern comic books. Like I said, it's from Silver Age to the present. So it covers from the first flash of that era all the way up to Kingdom Come. Now the art in this, it's not one that you get necessarily for the art. I mean, there are a lot of covers represented. Every now and then they'll have some splash pages. Here you can see Jack Kirby's The Block there, showing his New York compositions, street compositions. But you can see how I've highlighted it, you know, just trying to get to the essence of the story that is being told about the history of comics itself. To me, it's really fascinating to look into, because I found that by studying the past and how these heroes were created and how they evolved, what inspired their creation, it really helps me when I sit down and look at modern works and I start thinking, okay, well, how do I apply these creative sensibilities to today, and start to think up things that have not been created before, which is very, very difficult to do. If you've ever tried to create an original work, you know that is very true. But again, I highly recommend this. This is a book worthy. There's a great picture of Kirby at his table with all of his characters jumping off his desk. If you're interested in the history of superheroes and the history of comic books, this is a great, great book to take a look at. Here, see, here you go. It's not even just Marvel and DC and whatnot. You've got Thunder Agent, Wally Wood. There's Mr. A, Steve Ditko. Again, it's not a great book for the art. I mean, though there is plenty to break up the text. Oh, there we go. There's Savage by Gil Kane. R. Crumb, Neil Adams, The DC Experiment. You know, just it covers everything. Yeah, part of this is where they talk about the Green Arrow, Green Lantern, you know, relevant comics kind of thing. There's Steranko, the Marvel expansion, so on and so forth, all the way up to the end of the Silver Age, the beginning of the Dark Age. They call it the Awkward Age. I often called it the Age of Shadows, or just the Dark Age itself. Nowadays, it's more commonly known as the Bronze Age, but I think the Dark Age really pins down what this era was about, because you have to think about how it started. You know, Swamp Thing, Tomb of Dracula was huge at the time. You know, you had the introduction of all these really violent anti-hero type characters, Wolverine, the Punisher, whatnot, and it ended with the rise of Image. You know, Cable, the big guns, you know, Spawn, you know, the chains. Kids love chains. All that stuff. Downhill flows the mainstream. Fantastic book. There's early Jim Starlin work right there. Definitely highly recommended if you're into the history, or if you want to get an idea of what each of these creators and their specific works really added to the mosaic of comics. You know, this gets into it. Here you have Paul Gulacy's work in The Master of Kung Fu being showcased and showing how it's so cinematic. Great stuff. Anyway, I could flip through every single page. I just skipped over the X-Men. There's American Flag. But it goes all the way up to Kingdom Come. And when I got to the end of this, I was just like, well, where do we go next? You know, here's the Malibu books, which Gerard Jones worked on, mind you. You know, where do we go after Kingdom Come? Well, who knew? You know, who knew? The story was just beginning. There was a lot of things that happened after that and spun out of it. And oh, here we go. Here's Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. So again, but anyway, this is the updated version of it. It's updated and expanded. This book was originally printed in 1985. And this is the version from 96, I believe it was when it was released. So it's been expanded, and as far as I'm concerned, I mean it's just a thorough examination of those two particular ages. You know, and if you group this with Steranko's history of comics, what's his thing called, where it goes from the pulp books to the early Golden Age stuff, you know, you really have a great comprehensive overview of the early to modern years of comics. And of course, now we have a whole nother age that's passed since the Dark Age. And we're here now at the beginning of a brand new age of comics. So curious to see where it all goes next. But this book will probably never be reprinted just because of the name attached to it, and you know, the infamy and notoriety now that Gerard Jones has gained with his actions. But again, you'll have to go Google that. But this book goes anywhere from $1 to $2 to $300, depending on where you find it. I bought it super cheap at one of those outlet bookstores type things. It wasn't a secondhand store. It was just one. You know, it was like a Ollie's type thing at the time, where, you know, overstock items go to, and I think it was like maybe $6. And you can see I've beat my copy all to heck. You know, if it was in pristine condition, I would put it up for sale, because that's what I tend to do with things that become really valuable. And last but certainly not the least, dun 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 dun, Jack Kirby's Thor, the Artist Edition. I cannot even get this entire book on the video screen. Okay, it would take a completely different setup, and also this is so large. It's the largest of all of my Artist Editions. Okay, it even dwarfs Todd McFarlane's Amazing Spider-Man book and Frank Miller's Sin City Curator's Edition. I just turn it sideways so you can see the entire image there for a minute. This book goes anywhere from $200–300 all the way up to $500 and $600 at present. I was very fortunate to get a good copy of this, very close to the original price before they completely sold out. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a reprint of this. IDW seems smart enough to reprint the books that are in really, really high demand. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did another printing of this, but it's an absolutely fantastic work. Look at that. I can't even get all of the glory here on the screen. I just hit the armature for the camera. My camera, the arm that I use for this, I can't even get it up high enough to put the entire thing here on the screen. It contains pretty much the complete artwork for Journey into Mystery number 111, 117, and 118. Here's an introduction by Walter Simonson. He also of the Mighty Thor fame. There's a table of contents. Again, I apologize because you're just not going to be able to see all of this, but you can get an idea for what is there. Thor versus Mr. Hyde. These are great because you can see Kirby's notes in the margins. So, I mean, this is really fantastic stuff. It's the next best thing to being at the table with Kirby himself. I would love to have a complete collection of all of the Jack Kirby artist editions. And again, I apologize that I'm not able to put all of this on the screen for you. Let me see if I can at least get this. Turn this sideways. You can see that full. Okay, you'll just have to turn your head sideways or turn your phone sideways or your iPad, however you're watching this. Get that great image of Wundagore Mountain there. But anyway, there you go. It's number one, most valuable one in my collection nowadays. Not for sale, mind you. I rarely sell anything. The books that I sell are things that I don't read very often, or that I know they're in good condition, or that they have absolutely skyrocketed in price. Like I recently sold Invincible #1 at the release of Season 2 of Invincible on Amazon. They're not sponsoring Comic-Jutsu, by the way, but I'm just telling you the timeline. I was able to get a great price for that, and there are so many reprints of Invincible #1 now that I can easily replace that particular comic book experience, and I was able to use the funds from that for purchasing more supplies and tools and things to work with. So there you go. But there we have it. Those are my top 5 most valuable books about comics. We'll have to come back and do a feature on this at some point. The most evil book about comics ever made. Great Bernie Wrightson. Any one of these is worthy of a proper review and a complete flip through all on its own. So if you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me down below, hey, let's get a closer look at that Thor Artist Edition. Though I'm sure there are other videos out there about it. Or, hey, let's get a closer look at Bernie Wrightson and look back. Or, if you really want me to, we'll do a closer look at the most evil book about comics ever made, the comic book heroes. There you have it. I'm JT McRoberts. Tell your friends about the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Mate.